I love therapy, and in fact, I've been going to therapy since I was around 6 years old. Though I talk about therapy a lot and may interview some therapists on the show on occasion, nothing that is said in this podcast should be considered a replacement for therapy. If you are struggling, I urge you to please seek guidance from a therapist because you are absolutely worth it. Hello everyone, this is Rachel and you are listening to Wine, Dine, and 69, a podcast about dating, relationships, sex, and self-love. It's June. It's beautiful. Well, it was beautiful here at least. It looks like there's a thunderstorm about to roll in, but I love thunderstorms, so you know what, that's fine by me. And hey, guess what else comes with June and warm weather? Pride Month. Happy Pride Month, everybody. I'm loving seeing all of the love flowing out on social media, and though I love seeing it all year round, it seems like there is quite a crescendo at around this time of year of just all of the positivity and love of all kinds, and I love to see it. So happy Pride, everybody. I want to get into today's episode, but before I do that, a quick thank you to all of those who have used the referral link for Please Me. I've gotten a lot of really cool feedback of people, taking the sexual worlds test and loving their result. There was actually somebody who took it and was a little confused about the result until they kind of read the description and looked at how they answered the questions, and they were like, oh, that's actually more on point than I thought it would be. So yeah, thank you so much. I'll continue to be posting that referral link. Check it out. It's a really cool space because I'm dealing with a lot of issues right now posting on social media, and Please Me is a platform where I can do that without having to worry about strikes or warnings or just having my content taken down, which is happening a lot on social media to me, because unfortunately when you have a podcast about sex and it's not talking about sex for reproductive purposes, the internet doesn't like that, doesn't like talking about sex for pleasure. Who knew? So it's a little annoying. I'm not going to go on that rant today because I have a lot of other things to talk about, but another time, certainly, because of course it's going to keep coming up. So my partner sent me something on Instagram. Well, actually, I sent something to him first. It's a post that reads, on our wedding night, told my hubby we have a 2-2-2 rule. Every 2 weeks, we go out for the evening. Every 2 months, we go out for the weekend. Every 2 years, we go out for a week. People still ask how long our honeymoon phase will last. I think it'll last if we stick to our twos. Side note, I don't know why I really hate it when people call their partner hubby. I don't know why. I have no rational explanation. If you like calling your husband hubby, then more power to you. I don't know why I don't like it. I'll never do it. But you know what? You do you. Live your life. Live your truth. I just, for some reason, I don't know. I don't like it. And you know what the correct answer to that is? Well then, Rachel, you don't do it. And you are correct. Anyway, after that little diatribe, yes, I love this. So it's all about putting the relationship up front and center. And my partner and I have had a lot of conversations about how to make sure our relationship stays strong, because things change, you start to get comfortable, et cetera, et cetera. So after I sent that to him, first he said that he had seen it and thought of me. And then he sent me this fantastic article from the Gottman Institute, which I can't believe I haven't touched on before, because it's an awesome resource. So go check that out. Sign up for the email subscription. It's fantastic. Anyway, this article is about the magic ratio in relationships, and the magic ratio is 5-1. What that means is that for every one negative interaction that you have in your relationship, you should have 5, or, hopefully more, to offset that, so that there should be way more positives than there should negatives. And this may seem like No, duh. But I mean, as I said before, things change. You get into routines, things become stale. You start to take your partner for granted. It happens. I mean, it's life. And you can get into some pretty nasty patterns too if you're not careful. So there are a few different kinds of positive interactions. In terms of positive interactions, they all kind of fall in the following categories. Be interested, express affection, demonstrate they matter, intentional appreciation, find opportunities for agreement, empathize and apologize, accept your partner's perspective, and make jokes. Always good. So I had heard something about this a while back, a few years, I guess, but it's interesting because even before that, when I was in my last relationship, a similar thing to this came up, and I actually said something similar to my partner. So my partner had a tendency to be rather critical. This was by nature of him being, I think, both a Virgo and in law school. It was kind of his job to be as critical as possible. Can't fault him for that. And Virgos, they can't fucking help themselves. I digress. So he would have a tendency to be rather critical. And I would say to him, look, I don't mind constructive criticism. I don't mind having some feedback here and there. But as somebody whose primary love language is words of affirmation, I need the positive things that you are saying about me and the positive things that you are saying about the relationship and our interactions. I need those to outweigh the negatives. And at that point in time, they didn't. It was a lot of criticism, a lot of negativity, and not a lot of telling me what I was doing right. Hey, I'm not even going to go into it, but I was not in a great place back then. So there was probably a lot I was not doing right. But I thought it was interesting that I kind of said this idea to him before I'd even heard of this idea of the magic ratio. It's kind of, again, like, of course you want all of your interactions to be positive and you want the positive to outweigh the negative, but life happens. So connected to this wonderful article is another article that I clicked on, also from the Gottman Institute, called The Four Horsemen: Criticism, Contempt, Defensiveness, and Stonewalling. And just like these other more positive pieces are all part of the positive part of the ratio, these are part of the things that, these are the subjects that are part of that negative ratio that you want to try to avoid. Criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling. Nobody wants that. I did have a little bit of a laugh when I saw that criticism was the first one listed, just based on aforementioned relationship. So check this out. I mean, again, life happens and you are going to have disagreements in every relationship. But it's a good thing to keep an eye on, to make sure that you're aware and looking at, okay, let's take the temperature. Are we having more positive interactions than negative? And keep tabs on how you're responding to your partner and think about what you can do and discuss what you can do. I mean, I know that these conversations seem a little mundane, but relationship maintenance is important. And this doesn't just go for romantic relationships too. All relationships take work, and all relationships can suffer from these four horsemen and from these positive things on the more positive side of this ratio. So check these articles out. I'm going to link them in the episode notes. And again, thank you for the feedback on Please Me. I'll continue to be posting that the referral code in the episode notes. Today's episode, I talked to Joe. Joe goes by she, they pronouns. We talked about what gender identity is, what the difference is between gender and sex. We talked about Joe's journey in gender expression and kind of what that can look like. There was an Instagram post that I referenced that, again, I will link in the episode notes, that really does, I think, a fantastic job of describing what pronouns look like. And I'm not going to spoil anything. We talk about it in the episode and I'll link it. But I watched the Instagram video and I was just like, holy shit, this is incredible. And I just kind of wanted to send it to everybody that I know. And I thought about it too, that so in quarantine, I have kind of stopped wearing bras. And when I thought about, I wonder why, I haven't worn a bra for about 8 days at this point. I was like, because I actually don't like wearing bras. It makes me uncomfortable. I don't feel as free. And then I was like, holy shit, bras are a gender construct. So I don't know. It was kind of a aha moment for me. And just I guess another little interesting tidbit about my life and, how I have been thinking about these themes of gender identity and how gender is a construct. So really interesting. This conversation with Joe really spurred me to think a lot and have lots of interesting conversations. They provided a ton of really awesome resources as well. So check that out in the episode notes, a bunch of Instagram handles that you can follow to learn more. I hope that you enjoy this conversation. We've actually kept in touch, and I'm planning on hopefully meeting up with them and their partner to hang out at some point, just because we feel like we really gelled. So yeah, I guess without further ado, this thunderstorm is about to come in, and who knows if this recording could be ruined by that. So I'm going to sign off here. We're going to cut to a commercial and then enjoy my conversation with Joe.
Calling all citizens of Halcyon City. The newest generation of heroes are now painting the pages of Delinquent Comics, an actual play podcast in the game world of Masks, a new generation. Join our heroes as they struggle to build a team and save the city. Can Titan escape the shadow of his mentor burnout? Is Soul's overwhelming power too dangerous to control? Will Muse discover her past? And how does White Knight stomach all those strange snacks? Listen to Delinquent Comics to find out at allportsopen.com, Spotify, iTunes, or wherever podcasts are found. New issues become available to all citizens every other Monday.
Hi, everyone. I am here with my guest for this week, Joe. Joe, how are you?
Hi, I'm so great. How are you, Rachel?
I'm doing pretty well. Not too bad. It's getting warmer out, and there seems to be an end, maybe, of this pandemic in sight. So we will see.
Absolutely. I actually just got my first vaccination on Sunday, so I am actually really, truly feeling the hope.
Oh, that's so great. I think I'm supposed to get mine towards the end of the month.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, really looking forward to it.
For sure.
Yeah, I am so psyched to have you on. So mention first off on the bat that you are the partner of a previous guest that will probably be mentioned in the conversation.
Yes, my lovely partner, Hannah.
Yes, who was a joy to speak to. Quite lovely, and I'm like, I just want to be friends with all of these people that I'm meeting. All right, so I guess let's start off. I'm just going to have you tell me a little bit about you and your background, who you are, what's your relationship history, your relationship with sexuality, and yeah, I just find that this is a good place to start because it kind of is a good jumping off point into the conversation.
Sure. Yeah. So, like you said, my name is Joe. I use she, they pronouns. I was born and raised in Richmond, Virginia, nice little mid-sized city in Central Virginia. I am the product of two people who were trying to save their marriage, and so they had a third child, and I came along, and then 3 years later, my parents got separated. So, which is like, it's very comical to me at this point. It's very funny. So I have two older siblings, a brother who works in advertising, also was a former actor, and a sister who is a doctor, like both of my parents.
Okay.
She's the golden middle child in my mother's eyes. And then there's me. So I just graduated from undergrad in May of 2020. So that was an interesting
Congrats.
time. Thank you. It was an
Yeah.
interesting time to graduate, for sure. I studied sociology, and then I had a minor in gender, sexuality, and women's studies, which was super, super crucial and helpful in my journey, in my own personal journey. I think the two really important points for our conversation come in the forms of my relationships. So my mother is undiagnosed narcissistic borderline personality disorder.
Yeah, that's tough.
And I want to start off by saying to the listeners out there, because I definitely know there's going to be at least someone out there who has some knowledge in this in some way. It is undiagnosed on her end, but of all of the medical professionals and mental health professionals that I have seen, they all have confirmed from their professional perspective that this is what she has.
Sure.
So my mother's a narcissist. She is BPD, and both of those things together, conflated, create a very unique childhood experience.
Yeah, that is so much.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. And so I've got plenty of interesting stories about that and how that affected my growing up and my self-esteem and my identity, and how I navigate the world. As of February 2020, I've actually not spoken with her, and that's just a personal choice that I've made that has worked best for me.
Sure.
But I've grown so much and healed a lot due to various things from that relationship. So that's the first one that I think is the most noteworthy for our conversation. And the second one is my very first serious relationship. Well, okay, let me pause and back up first. So I'm a lesbian. I identify as a lesbian. I have been out since I was 14 years old, so freshman year of high school.
That's amazing. I love that.
Yeah, it's been a long time, and I'm 23 now for the record. So it's nearly a decade. That's crazy.
I love that.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm very, very proud, and I'm super out. It's not really a surprise to anyone, because honestly, if you looked at me, you would probably put two and two together. Which I will get into that for sure.
Okay.
But my very first serious relationship with a woman was my end of sophomore year into the beginning of my senior year of high school. And I met her online, as most people did in the, mid 2010s.
Yes.
Met her on Tumblr, of course.
Oh, wow. That's a time capsule.
Yeah, isn't it? And oh gosh, just looking back at it now, I can't help but cringe. But that relationship was very, very mentally and emotionally abusive. And it really stinks that was my first serious relationship, my first loving relationship with another person that wasn't a friend or family. And that also, I think most directly really was what affected my self-esteem and my self-love journey ultimately. And so I think that is kind of the genesis, not the genesis, but kind of the straw that breaks the camel's back from the genesis of my mother. So she was kind of the background. And then that relationship with this girlfriend kind of was what sets everything in motion. So I think that's kind of a good place to start in terms of that conversation. So that's me, I guess, in a nutshell.
I think that's so, you just did something that a lot of very emotionally intelligent people do, which is to connect. This is who I am now, and this is where that comes from.
I want to personally thank my therapist, Stephanie, for doing that. Yes. Lots of therapy is really what drew that connection. And truthfully, I do consider myself to be a very emotionally mature and connected person. I'm constantly thinking and constantly having conversations with myself and thinking through things, sometimes to a fault. But I'm very aware. I think that's a good way of putting it.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's great jumping off point, and it really lays the foundation to give people a sense of what you have struggled with in your past, and where it's kind of, well, where, let's bring that to, where has that brought you to today? You mentioned therapy, so that's, you know, been something that has assisted with that.
Definitely.
What are some other like stops along the way to where you are, who you are now?
Yeah, so I definitely actually think that like I've been a tomboy my whole life. I actually went to an all girls Episcopal private school from the ages of, you know, kindergarten to fourth grade.
Mm-hmm.
And I was very much like I stuck out like a sore thumb in terms of my style. I had very tumultuous relationships with the girls in my class, and could not understand why then, but definitely do now. And it was because I had crushes on all of them. Yeah, just little baby Joe, just like not understanding that. So I, in terms of like my gender identity and my expression, I definitely was compulsively, like kind of like compulsory, like hetero presenting, like for a long time, like wearing dresses. I wore makeup every single day of high school. And then my style just slowly started to meld toward like back into tomboy. And that was like kind of the word that I used for myself. And so that would be in the form of like Vans and like, and you know, like I bought my first button-up shirt. I remember this my sophomore year of high school, and I loved that thing. And it was the only one I bought. And like, I started wearing beanies. And everyone knew in my high school that I was gay, and it was very evident, but like I wore a dress to prom, and I knew how to girl up. And I think it was equal parts like I wanted it, but there was also a part of me that, I think just thought, well, this is what I need to do because I'm a woman, because I'm a girl. And, you know, I was 17, 18 years old. I didn't really know better. And it was what felt fine. And I dated girls, you know, all through high school. But it just never felt quite right. And I had this really long, you know, set of curly hair, blonde curly hair down to my shoulders. And I pulled it back every single day into a braid or a ponytail. I never wore it down. And that was also really important to my identity as well, because I never knew how to deal with it. And people knew me by my hair. It was the thing I was complimented on the most in my life. So when I got to college, just saying, I naturally started dressing more masculinely, I guess is a way to put it. I actually don't really prefer masculine as the main word to describe me. I prefer androgynous, because I like the mixture of the masculine and the feminine. I like the kind of the gray ambiguous area. That's what androgynous means to me.
Sure.
And so I think also a really crucial point in my journey has been when I lived in London for 6 weeks in the summer of 2019. And
that's awesome.
When I was over there, I cut off all my hair. I went to a barber and I said, do it. And I did. And it was a trip, let me tell you, for like 3 days. I was like, I don't know why I did that. And it was not a decision just from my own head. When I was still in the States, Hannah was like, would you ever think about like cutting your hair super short? And I said, no, never. And then like a couple weeks went by and she was like, well, what do you think about cutting your hair short? And I was like, well, maybe like when I graduate college. And then she asked again a couple weeks later, and I was like, maybe like at the end of the summer. And then it was the summer, and then I went abroad and I cut off my hair.
It's interesting because it sounds like there were like these transition points where you were thrust into a new environment, which like made you feel comfortable taking those steps. Like you said, going to college is when you kind of shifted your style. And then when you went abroad, it kind of gave you, it's almost like the new setting gave you that permission.
Yeah, it absolutely was. It absolutely was, because I think also it's new people who haven't known me, and I'm able to set up a new identity with them, not necessarily of changing my personality per se, but more of my expression and how I carry myself and think of myself and how I identify myself to people. And so then I think the last point in this whole thing is that this past winter, I was with Hannah. We lived together, for reference. We lived together in Richmond, and we were out one day and we stopped by a like menswear store, like a really nice local menswear store. And a guy who was sitting next to us at a restaurant had said, you should totally go there because I think that they run in smaller sizes. Like that would be perfect for you, because I'm a very petite woman. I'm 5'4". I'm very muscularly built. So I'm not at most dimensions of a man.
Sure.
And
so hard to find those in your size. Okay.
Yes, it's a struggle. And so I went into this store. I was really excited. I was a little nervous. And Hannah is my biggest cheerleader, my biggest supporter when it comes to my gender and my expression and my self-esteem. And so I walk in here and the salesman just was like, yeah, sorry, I can't help you. You either will have to have everything tailored for the rest of your life, or you can always shop in the boys section. And I was just like, I was speechless. And Hannah was like, cool, thank you. We're going to leave now. And so we walked outside and I burst into tears. And it was so arresting and alarming to be told that. And like, it is a statement of fact, but to be told that by a cis man in a men's clothing store to a person who dresses in that way, it's really hard. And I think it was just kind of also the culmination of being told that time and time again. And so we went home and I was sitting on the bed and Hannah was like, we're going to go through your entire closet and we're going to thin it out. And then we're going to get you clothes that make you feel amazing. So she measured me, all my dimensions. And we went through every article of clothing I owned and got rid of so much. I think I cut my closet down by half. And I got rid of every skirt and every dress, every heel. I literally got rid of all my makeup, which I hadn't worn in almost 2 years. I actually gave them to her. And I
can totally see her doing that.
Just,
based on the conversation that I had with her.
She's the absolute best.
Cheerleader indeed.
Yeah, she's just, and she believes in people. And that's what I really needed. I needed someone to believe in me, that I wanted to look like this and that I feel beautiful and attractive looking like this. And so we found some stores that really, really I jive with. And now I almost exclusively only shop at those stores. And I've been really vocal on like my social media about that and like how it's ridiculous how clothing is gendered, but at the same time, like clothing is such a important part of how one feels their gender.
Definitely.
And so I'm really, really grateful that I actually had that experience. And now I'm so confident in my closet. And it's so funny how it just comes down to those superficial things, but
yeah, no, that's by you speaking out about it too, you're giving a platform to like this issue that really does need some sort of solution. So like the more that you talk about it, the more it gives people the opportunity to fill that area, fill that need, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I have a lot of people who respond and say like, thank you for talking about this. Like, I did not know this, or like, I really want to change the way I speak about these things, thanks to you. And I don't try to use my social media or anything like that to get those compliments back. Obviously, it really is about education. I love educating people and I love telling people what I've learned, and hopefully it will make them feel and think the way that I felt and thought when I first learned it.
Excellent. So you said you were a sociology major.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Okay. And you also mentioned that you kind of wanted to touch on gender theory.
Yeah.
And I assume that those two things play in together, the background in sociology.
They do. They absolutely do.
Give the listeners and I, because I like to learn too, just an overview on that.
So I would kind of break it down into two main points. One, that gender is entirely made up. At the end of the day, gender as opposed to sex, which, yes, in a way is strictly biological, but gender, talking about what we see on the outside, how we think of ourselves, it is all constructed. Gender is a social construct. You hear so many people say that, but it's true. I mean, at the end of the day, we are all born naked. We are put into clothing by usually our parents, our society, that kind of fits to a script of what a little boy or a little girl looks like. And it's all performative as well, because we think of, well, what does a man act like? What does he sound like? Yep. What does he do? I think of like boy toys and girl toys. We think of vocabulary that women use versus what men use. Even the way that we speak. There is one of my professors, actually, he was my advisor, Thomas Linneman. He actually wrote an amazing paper on how women speak in this thing called uptalk, which is a style of gendered speaking in which women kind of talk with a lilt at the end of their voice, kind of almost in the form of a question. And the way that he studied that, I just did it earlier, the way he studied that was he watched Jeopardy. He watched hundreds of episodes of Jeopardy and listened to the way that women spoke versus the way that men spoke. And men spoke more in a manner of statement, as more confident, and women spoke more in the terms of kind of a question in the way of an uptalk. So it just kind of goes all back to the point that gender is very performative. Like women are supposed to be demure and men are supposed to be confident. So that's kind of the first main point. And the second point is that gender is all about power. And obviously we know about, the patriarchy. There is also a concept called hegemonic masculinity, which is this ideal masculinity that is actually impossible to achieve, and yet we impose it on specifically men anyway. Right. But power is what's most important. And I won't go on into how the society is a phallocentric one, but for those who don't know, phallocentric means penis admiring. But it really is about power, and the thing I love the most about gender and about sociology in particular is that it is interdisciplinary. It is intersectional, meaning that it crosses into different disciplines and different ideas, and you can't have one without the other. And so when I study gender, I also study race. I also study religion. I also study money. I also study class. I also study immigration. And so all of these authors that I've read and I quote, they all specifically study one subject, but at the end of the day, it all comes back to, gender, race, money, wealth, power. They all are interconnected.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And, I knew some of those points too, just, based on the reading that I do sometimes when I'm shopping. When I'm not doing this, I also heard too that, and I'm definitely guilty of this, that some women are guilty of, as a way to compensate for the upspeak.
Yeah.
There's a lowering of the voice, and now there is they add the glottal stop, what is the term? I'm a singer. I should know this. The like gravelly-ness.
It's a vocal fry?
The vocal fry. Yeah. Why?
Yes.
I was like, I should know this. Like, I've been trained my entire life to avoid it. Yeah, vocal fry. Like, what? Yeah. So that has been like a way that people are kind of trying to compensate. It's not great for your voice, but it also sounds kind of sexy. So
it does, and I am guilty of it too. But kind of similar to you, I have a background of being an actor, and so I was actually taught, don't vocal fry, don't lilt to the bottom at the end of your sentences, don't drop off. So I speak rather, I don't want to say emphatically, but very certain of myself. I think it also translates into my handshake as well. So I've been told.
Okay. So we covered gender theory. We covered kind of your journey through this. Let's talk about, so listeners who listened to the episode with Hannah will know that we spoke about polyamory, non-monogamy, everything under the umbrella of non-monogamy. Talk to me about how experimenting with non-monogamy and kink has impacted your relationship with yourself and with your partners.
Yeah, it's been such a journey. Oh my God. I think the first point is that, Hannah and I did not start off non-monogamous. We very much started off super monogamous. And then just through our curiosity, we started venturing into non-monogamy. And admittedly, it was hard in the beginning. I mean, I don't think I know a single person who has gone into polyamory or non-monogamy and it's been a smooth, easy transition. For me, I really had to have a conversation with myself about my self-esteem. Like that was my biggest hurdle, like full stop. It was my self-esteem, because that was what was the source and the root of my jealousy, my insecurities. Like, anytime I had a problem with, for example, if Hannah was going to go see a partner and I would be left alone, I would start into this spiral of, she would rather go be spending time with them. And it's because you're acting like this and you look like Y and you can't do Z. And it's this never ending snowball.
Right.
I mean, and so I had to, after unfortunately many tearful conversations, with my dear sweet Hannah, I had to have a serious conversation with myself about, what I can do and what I can offer and what I look like. And after a while, I started to take stock of who I am, what I do, what I can offer, what I look like, what I sound like, what I know. And I started really appreciating that. And I also started taking in evidence of, the kinds of friendships that I have and the kind of attention that I get and the knowledge that I have and the jobs that I've had. And looking at that evidence in front of me and being like, so I actually am really smart. I actually am really talented. I actually am really funny. I actually am really loyal. I actually am really hot. Like, so taking that evidence and understanding like, oh no, like that's, I was wrong about that of myself. The people who told me those things were wrong. And so entering into non-monogamy actually has helped me so much in my self-esteem journey and my self-love journey. And so that was, I think, a really wonderful point. I think the other point about that is that in terms of definitely with kink and BDSM, and I want to put a little, what's the word? I want to put a little note in this. Disclaimer, yeah. Thank you. Oh my gosh. I want to put in a little disclaimer that kink and BDSM, specifically kink, do not have to be pathological. They do not have to be psychologically rooted in anything. You can simply have a kink just because you have a kink for that. So I'm not trying to suggest in any way, shape, or form that kink is always pathological. However, in my case, I have found kink to be the thing that has helped me heal from a lot of traumatic ideologies, in particular, aggression and dominance. My mother was very domineering. She was very assertive, very smart and arrogant and strong and controlling. And when she would get into her manic rages, it was horrifying. It was the scariest monster I'd ever seen. And it was instilled in me that aggression and anger were scary and that I could be a scary monster when I was angry or when I was domineering. And so kink has actually really helped me heal from that, because when I am aggressive and dominant and controlling or angry, it is not a bad thing. It is actually a really beautiful and sexy and powerful thing. And so it has helped me heal so much. And it's also really helped me heal from the kind of dom drop. A lot of people have heard of the sub drop, but there is a dom drop as well, of coming from a dominant headspace and then feeling really, really, really horrible about the things that you've just did or said.
Okay, I didn't know that was a phrase. Okay.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And it's probably called something else in other circles, but what I consider is a dom drop. Okay. And so coming out of that headspace and being able to nurture and take care of someone and have them know that, hey, I still really like you a lot. And yes, it's all okay, the things that you said and did to me, is really important in that. So I don't know if I directly answered your question, but those things have really, really helped me with my journey and my healing as well.
That's fantastic. And I love I love speaking to such self-aware people. It's so nice. I've been in therapy since I was like 6 years old, so
Yeah.
I'm just I love talking to self-aware people.
Yeah.
And just the fact, you spoke before about power and these
Mm-hmm.
different power dynamics, and so this like gives you a safe way to experiment with those.
It does. Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, I'm a naturally affectionate, caring person. I love taking care of people. And to
Mm-hmm.
be able to do that kind of in a way where I kind of can call the shots, I can kind of do it my way, is so liberating, and it's so powerful. Instead of just constantly attending to the person's desires, it's like, oh no, like I can do what I think is in their best interest now. And that is so relieving and empowering.
That's great. Yeah, I can definitely see that.
Yeah.
Okay, so I do have a question, and I was a little bit nervous to ask it because I do want to, again, my turn for a disclaimer, put out there that it is not your job to educate anyone. But how would you, I just saw, okay, in the context of this, I saw something on Instagram last week talking about, I think it was she, them pronouns. And I thought it was an absolutely great resource for cis people. It talked about how there's like planet male and planet female, and people who identify strictly as one are like rooted to that planet. But if you're orbiting the planet, then like that's a different thing. And then somebody else made the comparison that like if that like being a woman or being a man and expressing yourself fully in like he, him, or she, her pronouns is Coke, then like I'm Pepsi.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And I found it so enlightening. And I was just like, yes, like this completely explains it and like makes it so clear. So I asked this question in the kind of shadow of that little preamble. What would you say to somebody who has a hard time seeing these things outside of the gender conforming boxes? Like they don't understand, maybe they want to understand, but they're unable. I hope you haven't had any really nasty experiences, but what would you say to somebody, or what advice or resources would you give to somebody who's having a hard time understanding?
Totally. It's actually really funny. I just had this conversation yesterday, actually, with my manager at my second job, who actually is a good friend, and he was coming from a really innocent place. So like I said right at the top, I use she, they pronouns, and I love that imagery that you described of the planets. That I'm going to use that from now on. I love that.
I'm going to see, what, I'll find it and I'll send it to you, and I'll also see if I can link it in the episode notes.
Oh, please do. Please do. I think that's a really great analogy. I mean, is that's how I kind of feel. I orbit the female planet, but I visit this liminal space in between both of those planets. Like, what do you call the space in between those planets? It's just space, right? It doesn't belong to one or the other. It's kind of like airspace or the ocean. It doesn't belong to a certain country, right?
Right.
But I think it kind of goes back to what I was saying before about gender theory, in that just for a moment, to the person who is listening to this who might be a little bit scared or nervous or freaked out by what Rachel is describing. Gender is entirely made up. It really is. Yes, again, sex is biological. We do have male genitalia and female genitalia, chromosomes, hormones, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. However, for a moment, the things that we ascribe, the things that we choose to fit in those two boxes of male or female, boy or girl, we put them there. And so who is to say that we can't be the ones to take them out of those boxes? Who is to say that those are the only two boxes? And I think actually I keep coming back in my head to that planet analogy. It's perfect. That liminal space. There's a huge amount of space in outer space.
Yeah.
Like, if we think about it, our galaxy is massive, and there are multiple galaxies. There are hundreds of galaxies we don't know about. Who is to say that this part of space that is off the surface of, for example, Jupiter belongs to Jupiter, right? And why can't something exist right there? You know, star stuff or waves of light or something like that, that is in transit to a black hole. I'm like, my mind is like racing thinking of analogies, but I guess I'll go back to like kind of talking about pronouns in particular. I really like she, they, because as I said, I'm androgynous. I make people question what comes out of their mouth a lot. I've gotten sir, I've gotten ma'am, I've gotten like more times than I can count. And I love it. And so I've gotten so used to people calling me they, them, that I'm like, okay, like I kind of don't really mind anymore. I like confusing people. But he, no, does not jive with me, does not jive whatsoever. I still love the fact that I'm a woman. I love the fact that this is my version of femininity. This is how I feel beautiful. This is how I feel like a woman can look, right? And so we see women look different every single day. So why can't a woman look the way I do? And I think that kind of answers your question of like, you know, well, how and why? We make it up ourselves. We make the rules. I'm making the rules of what a woman can look like. And that's why my pronouns are the way that they are. I can choose to be a cis woman and use they, them pronouns sometimes. I think that's all I have to say about that.
It's almost like, you know, there's, if we're looking at it, you know, in boxes, people are like, what are the boxes? If there's a male box and a female box, like they kind of covers everything that's in between.
It is. But also at the end of the day, like, why is it a box? Why that sounds so constraining, you know, why can't it be a lake or an ocean? Right?
Absolutely.
So much can fit inside those. They are never ending. They are infinite. And that's, I think, is the beautiful part about gender. It's infinite.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. It can go, you can be hard in one direction, hard the other direction. And let's be honest, most people are not.
That's
for sure. Going to be really, really difficult to be very hard one way or the other. Well, I guess, let me see. I have a couple more questions for you.
Please. Let's do it.
Okay, well, what advice would you give to somebody who is struggling with love of self? What advice would you give to somebody struggling with gender identity? Those are kind of two separate questions, but still under the advice umbrella, if you will.
Totally. It's funny because I think some of the advice for both are similar and some of them are very different. Sure. So I'll start with the self-love and the self-esteem thing. As many people have probably heard, it is not linear. It is very much not linear. You will have days where it's really great and other days where it's really hard. And sometimes it'll be weeks where it's hard and other times it'll be weeks where it's great. So just understand that it is not linear and it will take time. It's not like you're going to wake up one day and it's just going to all be better. It certainly wasn't for me. I think another thing is that you cannot rely on outside sources to find it. You can ask people to validate you over and over and over again every single day. It's kind of like a fire starter versus kindling, or like actual fire logs. Outside validation is the fire starter. It will get the spark going. It cannot sustain the fire. The logs are what sustain the fire. That's you. You're the logs. And so you cannot rely on the outside sources. You have to start listening to yourself too. Another really important thing that I kind of think goes along with that, and something that I did that was super helpful, was record what you're good at and record what you're like and what you like and what you are good at doing. I have a list in a notebook somewhere in this desk of the things that I am good at and the things that that are true about me. And like, I really had to sit down and think about it. I spent an hour writing this list and there's maybe only about 40 things on there. But looking back at it now, I could probably double that list. And I wrote that like back in October. So do that. Really, like sit down and write it out with your hand, like with a pen and paper, write it down. And the last thing I would think for self-love is take stock of the evidence around you. If you see your, Facebook friends list has 1,700 people, I don't think that most of those people are superficial. If you've had a string of kind of really cool jobs that you've been at for more than a few months, that probably means that you're a hard worker. If you have a college degree, for example, that might mean you're smart. If you have a partner, for example, that might mean you're hot and attractive and sexy. Like, take evidence of the things around you. I think in terms of people who are struggling with their gender, the things that I did when I really wanted to understand how I wanted to look was I just started looking at fashion. I started Googling images of, for example, men's streetwear and men's, business attire. And I found myself loving it. And I was like, okay, like that feels good. And allow yourself, give yourself the permission to try things, to go into that section of the store where you were so scared of going into, and think of a person around you who is seeing you do that and how brave they think you are. And that gives them the bravery. I think every single day when I go into the men's section of a store I hope someone can see me and they can get the bravery to do what I'm doing, because it took a hell of a lot of bravery for me to do that. So give yourself permission. Give yourself permission.
That's fantastic. I love this. It just makes me so happy to hear people living their truth.
Thank you.
So I guess before we get into wrapping things up, are there any resources that you can recommend for people who maybe want to learn more about kink or gender expression or non-monogamy?
Yeah, I really love Instagram, actually, for most of my education. Ask a Sub is a great kink and BDSM source. Also, shrimp teeth, shrimp like the little fish, and teeth like what's in your mouth, is also a really great resource for both polyamory and for kink. And they also, both of those two in particular, link to a lot of different resources, especially sources for people of color and from people of color, which I think our communities, especially in the kink and polyamory communities that are so underrepresented. So listen to people of color it's another example of where we need to listen to people of color more. But those are two that kind of come to mind for sure.
Okay.
And also feel free to follow me on social media. I really share. Yeah, I share everything that I think is worth listening to and reading and talking about on my social media. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Rowzicki, ROW_ZIK_EE. It's the phonetic way of how you pronounce my last name.
Okay.
And yeah.
I love that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. This has been fantastic. I have loved speaking with both you and Hannah. And yeah, any last thoughts, any last pieces of advice, perhaps an inspiring quotation?
Actually, yes. I have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful quote I look at on my desk, which is where I'm sitting right now. And I sit here during work and I sit here during therapy, and it is by my hero, Mr. Fred Rogers. Yes. And it is, knowing that we can be loved exactly as we are gives us all the best opportunity for growing into the healthiest of people.
Fantastic. Well, Jo, thank you so much for talking with me today. It has been fantastic.
Thank you, Rachel. I really appreciate talking with you.
Yeah, no, it's been great. And everybody, this has been Wine, Dine, and 69, and let's keep talking.